Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang berbahagia Datuk Seri Dr. Adham Baba, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. Yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail, Presiden Akademi Sains Malaysia, Council Members, Senior Fellows and Fellows of the Academy, Puan Hazami Habib, CEO Akademi Sains Malaysia, Senior Officers from Ministries, Departments and Agencies, Working Group Members for the Science Outlook 2020, panel speakers, members of the media, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning to everyone. I am honoured to be among such a diverse group of people to chair this study and to present the findings of our study today. Thank you for being with us today despite your busy schedules. It took us 18 months to complete the study in between many periods of MCO during the COVID-19 pandemic. This report was made possible by the hard work of many dedicated individuals coming together to brainstorm, conceptualize and analyze the vast data we had collected. We had collected documents and evidence covering 3 decades between 1990 to 2020. We hope to be able to learn from the past so that we can unlock the future, hence the title of the report, Science Outlook 2020, Unlocking the Future. I wish to thank everyone in the team who makes this study possible. Deputy Chair, Head of the Working Group members, analysts and research assistants. We also wish to express our appreciation to the President of the Academy and the STI Policy Advisory Committee for providing inputs and in ensuring the appropriate narratives of this report. Thank you also to the CEO, management and staff of the Academy for their continuous support for this study and for this event. Not to forget, we wish to thank all ministries, agencies, organizations and individuals who have helped us in getting through this study. Ladies and gentlemen, the Science Outlook is the Academy's biennial flagship report. This report serves as a measuring and evaluation yardstick of Malaysia's STI performance. The philosophy of the Science Outlook takes us into appreciating the success and understanding the gaps of Malaysia's STI landscape through a comprehensive, independent, data-driven analysis and benchmarking. The Science Outlook also provides recommendations for the government and relevant stakeholders to make informed policies and decisions. For Science Outlook 2020, we use an ecosystem approach and perform systemic review in evaluating selected STI-related indicators. We also evaluated the impacts of the STI ecosystem on the outputs and outcomes of 3 main pillars: economic development, societal well-being, and environmental sustainability. We seek to understand our STI landscape to enable us to propose strategies to help Malaysia to grow into a high-income nation and achieving the aspirations of our shared prosperity vision 2030. This report also offers a foresight to future-proof Malaysia with the hope that we can be better prepared for the future and we do not repeat our past mistakes. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 1980s, we have witnessed our economic transition from an agriculture-based economy to manufacturing-based economy. In 2010, under the new economic model, we embarked on the journey towards achieving the high-income status nation by 2020. This was the start towards the transition of an innovation-led economy. However, the aspiration to grow wealth through innovation has not been fully realized. Our economy is still much dependent on manufacturing. And this has created an innovation chasm. We cannot turn into an innovation-led economy when we continue to rely on manufacturing-based economy. We know that a harmonious, prosperous, and sustainable nation is one where every level of society receives an equitable distribution of wealth. Our new economy must continue to center around knowledge and innovation, and at the same time, the people must be at the core of the nation's growth. Therefore, the transformation towards humanizing knowledge economy is what we aspire to do through STI. This is also one way of achieving our SPV 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, let us use South Korea and Taiwan as comparison. In 1970s, both South Korea and Taiwan were two economies below Malaysia's income. But both South Korea and Taiwan achieved high income status nation in 2010. So what stops Malaysia from making such a leap? Why are we still being stuck in the middle income trap? And where do we stand with respect to societal well-being and environmental sustainability? Let us walk through the analysis and the findings of the Science Outlook 2020. To paint a big picture, we started our study by looking into overall aspects of our STI ecosystem and the impact on the three pillars: economy, societal well-being, and environmental sustainability. The overall analysis shows a significant improvement in our STI ecosystem and the economic impact. This may not be a surprise, as our major development policies and implementation had always emphasized on the tangible economic outcomes. The economic growth, however, was not followed by the societal well-being and the environmental sustainability. Both of these aspects had declined over the same 20-year period. Now, we need to understand why this happened. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia has produced many well-crafted visions, policies, and key development plans since independence. From 7 key documents we analyzed, we can observe that some keywords which appeared more frequently in those documents, and the prominent keywords include Bangsa Malaysia, Prosperous Malaysia, Unity and United Malaysia, and equitable distributions. Now, over the last 30 years, we developed and repackaged these documents with seemingly similar strategies in place. By now, it is evident that they have not produced the desired outcomes for Malaysia. So what we can do differently now? If we look into the national economic focus area over the last 30 years, some focus areas were in constant succession over the 5-year Malaysia plans, while some were dropped and some new ones were added. The question is really, did we have strategic focus? It is almost as if we never have one. Priority areas of economy and STI were not always aligned. One criteria of an innovation-led economy is to monetize from R&D activities. With the strategic focus between the economy and STI is not aligned, it resulted in what we call as innovation chasm. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2016, EPU carried out a study on knowledge content in 21 key economic areas. The report showed we do have several pace-setter industries such as IT services and electrical and electronics industries. Unfortunately, the sectors that provide for basic needs such as agriculture, construction, medical and health services are laggards. We need to move these strategies into pace-setter industries. We need to find the right strategy to move these sectors up the value chain for high value return by utilizing the pace-setter industries of IT and EE into these laggard sectors. Let us look further into electrical and electronics and also agriculture sectors. Manufacturing sector, particularly electrical and electronic industry, has been a key driver of economic growth for the country since 1980. It is consistently exhibiting strong performance, contributing significantly to GDP growth, employment, and export-led economy. We perform well, but in the low value add activity, which is the back-end part of the EE industry. DOSM reported an increase in R&D expenditure by Malaysia-owned electrical and electronic companies from 87 million in 2009 to 339 million in 2015. However, this amount is too small for us to be competitive. R&D in high-value front-end, such as IC design, development, and fabrication, does not come cheap. The challenge in building a highly competent and intellectual talent pools and continuous investment to build our competitiveness must be addressed. This requires a new paradigm with a whole of government and whole of society approach. Agriculture industry was early engine of the nation's economic growth and development. Over time, agriculture contributed to the nation's GDP and export has declined. Agriculture sector becomes an unappealing career of choice for local talents due to low salary, unattractive career prospect, and societal perceptions of farming. This also has led to a high dependence on low-skilled foreign labor. The competitiveness of Malaysia's agriculture industry is falling behind the global agriculture industry due to continued traditional farming activities. In addition, the intensity of R&D in agriculture sectors is relatively low. The issues have negatively impacted the self-sufficiency level and food security for the country, which in turn increases the reliance on import. We can see that STI initiative have helped diversify our economy from an agriculture to manufacturing and service-based industry. Overall, Malaysia is losing out due to economics of scale, not capitalizing on STI. R&D is either done at a small scale or R&D is not producing indigenous innovation worthy of global value. Despite strong progress with some sectors, Malaysian industries are unable to build significantly strong global competitive advantage positions across the full spectrum of the industry's operations. Ladies and gentlemen, Vision 2020 was the first long-term guiding document that defined aspirations for Malaysia to establish a Bangsa Malaysia and to be a high-income economy that is fully developed across all economic, political, social, spiritual, psychological, and cultural dimensions by 2020. Science Outlook 2020 also attempts to evaluate the challenge of the Vision 2020 from STI lens. We made observations of some key elements of the Vision 2020. In summary, many aspects of Vision 2020 were not realized due to inconsistencies between economic and social engineering policies. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now deep dive into our major infrastructure development. The slide shows major infrastructure development projects in the country since 1990. It has been the engine of growth and capacity building for Malaysia. This includes massive expansions to transportation network, social infrastructure, and non-physical development infrastructure to transition Malaysia into a knowledge economy. This infrastructure boom helped us to convert early to globalization. However, some expansion of infrastructure was not accompanied by sustained support and follow-through, which led to not achieving or partially achieving the intended impact. This case in point is illustrated in the next slide for Multimedia Super Corridor. The Multimedia Super Corridor was a visionary state-of-the-art attempt to spur knowledge economy and transition Malaysia into a global champion. The desired end state of the original MSC was to achieve exponential growth by creations of world-class infrastructures in Cyberjaya and MSC areas to attract world-class companies who are expected to collaborate with domestic companies in increasing economic productivity. This then was envisioned to spur regional champion, if not a global champion, to take indigenous technology to the next level. However, after 24 years of its establishment, only 6 out of 7 flagships are partially achieved, and one did not even materialize. Ladies and gentlemen, an ecosystem approach is needed to ensure successful implementation of our beautiful policies. Malaysia's STI ecosystem has not changed significantly, with the exception of infrastructure and infrastructure. A majority of STI enablers have advanced very little or have declined over the years. The most significant decline was in the incentives indicator. This is caused by too many players with no central coordination for distributions and lower industry investment in R&D and other STI-related activities. We know that STI is the catalyst to the progress and development of any nation. Now, let us see how Malaysia has performed in some selected key STI indicators. Science and technology was only introduced for the first time in the 5th Malaysia Plan in 1986. Capacity building in R&D began in earnest in 1990s with the establishment of the IRPA funding to foster R&D in public university and research institutions. Malaysia's growth expenditure on R&D, GERD, grew steadily from 2006 until 2016, but fell sharply to 1.04% GERD per GDP in 2018. Now, GERD for most innovation-driven economies is always above 2%. To remain competitive, sustainable funding for R&D must be made available. Our study shows that business enterprises do not put enough investment in R&D activities in Malaysia. In order to accelerate innovation and technology adoption, we need to strengthen private sector participation in R&D and to increase business enterprise expenditure on R&D to a share target of 70% by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, STI cannot progress without adequately trained intellectual capital in sufficient number. Malaysia's number of full-time equivalent researchers is low compared to developed countries. As of 2018, there were only 4.5 FTE per 1,000 labour force in Malaysia. Malaysia's FTE are 2 times lower than that of high-income economies. 80% of Malaysia's researchers are institutions of higher learning, with only 15.8% in the business sectors, hence limiting innovation capabilities in our industries. Countries like Thailand stand at 60%, South Korea at 82%, has a higher proportion of researchers in business sectors. The present researchers' FTE proportion in Malaysia is not conducive towards establishing a knowledge economy needed to propel the country to become a high-income nation, and this needs to be addressed comprehensively in both public and private sectors. In the next few slides, we'll illustrate Malaysia's regression in research productivity from 1996 to 2016, despite producing greater number of research publications. The quantum increase in publication is not accompanied by higher level of patent granted or commercialized by industries. By 2006, Malaysia had 4 times more researchers than in 1996. This increase in the R&D output with a stronger emphasis on publication rather than patent applications. Malaysia regressed in research productivity in this measure from 1996 to 2016, despite producing greater number of publications by 2016. The animation illustrates that although Malaysia is growing in the productivity, but the pace is relatively low compared to other economies. The research productivity reflects the fact that most of our researchers are in universities. We are without long-term R&D investment strategy, and there is very little collaboration from business enterprises to be part of the RDCI value chain. Malaysia should emulate the STI ecosystem of Singapore, where both government and industry shows strong commitments for long-term investment in fundamental and translational research. Without strengthened STI ecosystem, we cannot expect to have a high return of translational research to take place in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia's economy shows an upward trend in GDP. This upward trend in Malaysia's real GDP had substantially improved the well-being of our people. However, the volatile GDP growth rates showed Malaysia's struggle to manage external shocks to the economy. We observe the economies which are founded on STI are more agile, are able to bounce above global economic challenges much faster. While the STI initiatives were envisioned to enable Malaysia to create a responsive STI ecosystem, the recent COVID-19 pandemic proved otherwise. Looking into this scenario, it is imperative to future-proof Malaysia's economy and build resilience with a holistic strategy to address upcoming challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia's education system has made tremendous progress in laying the foundation for talent for the nation. However, with the dependence on low-skilled foreign labor, poor distribution of local labor, mismatch in skill sets, as well as education attainment levels, Malaysia is not doing well in translating knowledge into innovation and wealth. Malaysia has increasingly relied on foreign migrant workers to fill the gap of low-skilled jobs. Labor productivity is an important economic indicator, but Malaysia recorded performances below advanced countries such as Singapore, South Korea, and Japan. This illustrates that our STI ecosystem is not agile enough to evolve into a knowledge-based economy. We are also not seeing the fruits of knowledge creation impacting the society. In fact, the employed individuals in the skill category have not shown significant rise over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, although Malaysia has significantly reduced poverty from over 50% in 1970s to 5% in 2019, income inequality in Malaysia remains high relative to other East Asian countries. We have witnessed the income gap getting wider over the 30 years period. There seems to be an unequitable distribution of the wealth to our people. About half of employed Malaysians earn well below our poverty line. Now, poverty affects societal well-being. We are now in the situations where houses are seriously unaffordable. 1 in 4 Malaysians turn to cheaper, less nutritious food. 1 in 5 children under 5 years have stunted growth. The mental health issues in Malaysia has tripled from 1996 to 2016, and this represents 4.2 million of our population. The questions we can ask, can STI ecosystem addresses these societal well-being challenges? We are proposing these strategic interventions to address these issues. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now move into the environmental sustainability pillars. You may have experienced the weather getting warmer, and the overall patterns are getting rather unpredictable. Why is that? Let us now have a look at Malaysia's performance in environmental-related indicators. This chart shows that over the last 8 years, Malaysia's performance had contracted in almost all indicators. The overall decline was 43 positions from number 25 in 2012 to 68 in 2020. Over the last 24 years, Malaysia has cumulatively lost an estimated 7.8 billion to environment-related disasters. Additionally, 947 billion ringgit was lost as welfare costs of environment-related premature death. This comes to an average loss of 39.8 billion per year due to environment-related causes, which amounts to about 3% GDP lost in 2019 and 2020. We need to have a serious look at our environmental governance. Under the past 6 Malaysia plans, there are fragmentations of sources and authority over environmental protections and conservation. We have seen matters of environment are located or looked after by ministries with multiple portfolios, governing the various green, brown, and blue elements of the environment. Malaysia must take a focused approach to care for our natural asset and sustainability. The political will in implementing evidence-based policies aligned to the environmental conservation to support the country's progress are something we should have planned yesterday and implemented today. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe the main change agent here is the governance, that is to mainstream management of the environment. It is imperative to implement collaborative open data sharing to make it accessible for responsible conservation, management, and utilizations of biodiversity for sustainable development of Malaysia. We need to promote compliance monitoring and enforcement activities for sustainable management of our environmental well-being. Coordination, mainstream enforcement efforts, and strengthening environmental governance in Malaysia must be done through an apex overarching regulatory body which will strengthen institutional capacity and regulatory framework at both federal and state levels. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 90s, Malaysia was known as the Asian tiger. The economy was booming, infrastructure developments was rampant, and Malaysia stepping into industrialization economy created many new job opportunities. We were synergized in harmony, backed by good governance with a decent quality of life. However, this study has illustrated Malaysia did not keep up with the momentum in making necessary systemic changes to be part of the higher global value chain. Malaysia's past and present have been heavily influenced by political decisions that were not necessarily evidence-based. The reality check shown today illustrates that we are trapped in misery. The COVID-19 pandemic added salt to our wounds, showcasing poor decision-making, causing severe blow on our livelihood and our overall well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, there may be a foolproof way to break away from this cycle of misery. Malaysia's global competitiveness is closely tied to the development of the nation's STI ecosystem. From our analysis using the growth theory, improvement in STI will contribute to economic performance, and the right policy decisions will reciprocate in our well-being and the sustainability of our environment. The two trajectories shown here examine the impact of STI ecosystem on global competitiveness scores and ranking of Malaysia. The projections are based on the STI trajectories whereby trajectory number 1 shows the status quo position, where we are not changing anything. Malaysia's global competitiveness is expected to decline over time. In terms of ranking, Malaysia is expected to fall 19 spots from 27 in 2019 to 46 by 2030. Trajectory 2 show an enhanced STI ecosystem where Malaysia's global competitiveness is expected to improve from the current positions of 27 to 18 by 2030. Malaysia needs to continuously invest in strengthening the enablers of the STI ecosystem to ensure positive spillover impact to key industry and economy sectors. This is the only way of unlocking the future for Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, to move forward, we must learn from the past, unlearn from our shortcomings, and relearn from others to propel Malaysia into becoming a high-tech nation in the next 10 years, with a society that is truly accepting of each other's diversity and equitable wealth distribution. The Science Outlook 2020, Unlocking the Future report, proposes 5 overarching recommendations. Number 1, to strengthen STIE ecosystem to support whole of government and whole of society approach towards global competitiveness and sustainable development. We need to have a robust STI management and monitoring system for impact tracking and e-governance through establishing of a national digital governance ledger. Number 2, to institutionalize strategic foresighting to create a vibrant, agile, and responsive STIE ecosystem to set an evidence-based future direction for the sustainable development of our country. Number 3, to establish infrastructures as a basic utility, whereby broadband infrastructure services as a basic utility and incorporate STIE-driven infrastructures to transition society and enterprises towards embracing the knowledge-based digital economy and services. Number 4, to nurture future-ready talent to generate new sources for socio-economic growth and sustainable development. We need to formulate a talent master plan based on the 1010 MySTIE framework, which has been formally adopted as a national framework. Number 5, to foster a culture of knowledge sharing and strategic collaboration to strengthen local and global STIE knowledge networks in niche areas. We need to strengthen our regional innovation center to spur local startups and indigenous technology. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot expect to unlock the future by being dependent on our traditional mindset bogged by legacy practices. To walk into the future, we need a mindset change. We need a growth mindset, a change from traditional mindset to a knowledge-driven mindset. For Malaysia to reclaim the space globally, continuity and leadership is a must. The whole of government and the whole of society approach must be adopted so that we can develop collaborative strategies for knowledge-intensive outcomes and impact. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we may be excellent solo players, but we need the right leadership to orchestrate Malaysia's leap to being a global player. We must fix Malaysia's STI ecosystem. The change must be systematically orchestrated to play local tunes in global arenas and to play global tunes in global arenas. An STI ecosystem framework to unlock the future is the game changer we are proposing here. With that, I end my presentation, and once again, thank you to each and every one of you to stay onto this very minute. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.